Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Scottsdale Big Book study today, where we will be studying the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Today's date is the 7th of February, 2026. My name is Audrey Ann, and I'm a compulsive overeater from County Meath in Ireland, and I'll be your host for today's study. The co-hosts are Johan, Tony B, and Nancy. If you need to contact any of the co-hosts, please contact through the chat box during the meeting. Please join us here in this room every Saturday morning, 7:30 Pacific time and 10:30 Eastern time. There's also a meeting Sunday through Friday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time and 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. If you have any questions during the meeting, please contact either myself or any of the co-hosts by private message during the meeting, as the meeting chat function will be disabled until 5 minutes before the Q&A. Please note that the speaker, Harlan, will be recorded for the duration of the study. However, the Q&A sessions which follows will not be recorded. We ask if you can please make sure to keep your microphone on mute at all times during today's study, and also please turn off your video if you are exercising, eating, or if you need to step away from your screen for any reason. During the meeting, we will post a link to our 7 tradition. The money goes towards the cost of the Zoom account, the cost of uploading the recordings, and also contributions to the Intergroup, Arizona Serenity in the Desert, and the World Service Organization. We will post a link of the previous recordings also in the chat, and this link will be there just as soon as I step off this. And I will now turn you over to Harlan. Thanks, Harlan.
Thank you very much, Audrey. I'm so honored to be here, and I'm so grateful that you guys have come this morning. We're going to be talking about step 9 this morning, and we're going to start off on page 76 at the bottom of the page. Probably there are still some misgivings, but I want to talk to you for a couple of minutes before we begin, because in our lives, we, even though maybe we weren't aware of it, although I'm not so sure when I hear that's correct, but maybe we didn't set out to do this, but we hurt other people. There were other people that were hurt by our behavior. In my case, my hurt was not, I didn't kiss anybody's wife. I didn't hold hands with anybody's girlfriend. I didn't do any of those things. Those are not my things that I had to make amends for ever. My amends were money amends. There were people I lied right to their faces, and I borrowed, and if you can't see me, I'm using air quotes here. I borrowed money from them, and I knew damn well I was not going to be able to pay that money back. I was always in the back of my mind thinking that there would be some magical, mystical day that would dawn when I would be able to just pay off all these people with money that I did not have, that would somehow appear in my bank account, maybe. I'm not sure. But the bottom line is still this. I wrote checks that were not worth toilet paper. I wrote bad checks for auto insurance. I wrote bad checks for lots and lots of different things. And I did not have the money, and I didn't have the income to live in the world that we were living in. I did not have it. I also hurt a lot of people by some of the things I said and some of the things I rudely did. I remember one time I was going to a Cub game with an old friend, and this new friend wanted to go to somewhere, I forgot where it was, and I went off with him and left this other guy hanging, and that was very rude of me, very, very mean of me, very, very cruel of me to do that. But I was so enraptured with the new friend that wanted to be my friend, I just ditched the other guy completely. Thank God I'm still friends with that first person today, because he and I have been friends for a very, very long time. And I'm very, very sorry about what I did. It is said that the average alcoholic, and I think it applies to us too, we take 5 people to hell with us in our journey through life. We hurt a lot of people. And in my years in this program, in doing inventories and doing these things, I have run the gamut between people who think they hurt everybody and people who think they hurt nobody. I think that somewhere, as it said, in the middle lies the truth. Somewhere in the middle lies the truth. And I think that when we do the inventory process, which is really 4 through 9, as we clean up the past, we don't just clean up the past in 4, we clean up the past in 4 through 9. And I think it's very important for us to remember that. I also want to make sure that I say this now because I'm thinking about it. To delay a sponsee from step 10 at this stage is very, very harmful, because I don't know about anybody else, but I need step 10 and 11 to lean on while I'm going through my amends process, because my amends process is going to bring up anger and guilt and shame and remorse and resentment that, when you scratch the surface, are going to need step 10. And on page 84 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, where we get into step 10, it says, we vigorously commence this way of living. In other words, we enthusiastically begin this way of living. What way of living? Step 10. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. Notice that it doesn't say we vigorously commence this way of living after we cleaned up the past. And one of the mistakes that I find people doing as sponsors, Joe and Charlie talk about this, and I'm going to talk about it now as well, is we get this idea you cannot start a step until you're done with the previous step. Step 9 could take a very protracted length of time to finish, because there may be people that have just put you off for one reason or another, or you can't find them, or you haven't gotten around to them yet, because it's just the nature of the step. So it's very, very important that we start our sponsees on 10 and 11. And we're going to see at the end of step 9, we're going to see a reference to step 11 in step 9, so as to indicate to us that while you're doing this, you need to be doing steps 10 and 11, and then very, very quickly 12, because nothing ensures immunity from drinking like intensive work with other alcoholics. As we begin step 9, before we get to page 76, the bottom of 76, probably there are still some misgivings. I also want to remind you of something, a couple of things. One of the byproduct, or the main byproduct of the steps, is a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, so as to give me an effect so that the urge to eat simply is not there. But one of the things that we have to look at as we proceed into step 9 is that there are 3 other byproducts of the steps that are very intentional, very deliberate. We get right with ourselves, we get right with God, and as we do this, we get right with our fellow human being. Now, one of the things that we want to look at before any examination of step 9 is one of the things I said about guilt and shame and remorse. Now, I may be different from you. I may be the same as you. I don't know. But because of the money issues and because of the weight issues, because of the shame that I lived in during my entire life in this disease, I'm wearing garments today that fit. I'm wearing garments today that are purchased from a normal store. I don't have to go to Herb's Hippo Emporium or Omar the Tent Maker to get a shirt. This is a normal shirt that is sold in a normal store, which I'm very, very grateful for. I mention that a lot because it's important to me. But when I was extremely, extremely up in weight, I didn't want to see people. I know the look of horror on their face. and I didn't want to see anybody. So I would, as best I could at 700, 600, 500, hide from people. I didn't want to see them on the street. I probably lied to them. I probably owed them money. And another way that I lied to people was, if I thought that you would like me because I was a Democrat, I would be a Democrat. If I thought you liked me because I was a Republican, I would be a Republican. If I thought you liked me because I was whatever, then I would become whatever. And I didn't live a life of honesty like I do today. If there's anything you should know about me, unless this is your first time here, I am a person who shoots from the hip. I am who I am, and I don't pretend to be anybody that I'm not. And I like me a lot better when I do that. I don't like me very much when I try to be something or somebody that I'm really not. And so there was a lot of fear involved, because if you think I'm a Democrat and Joe Blow over here thinks I'm a Republican and you're in the same room, oh my God, of course, what else are you going to talk about besides me? So I'm going to be outed. I'm going to be in trouble, because if I get into a conversation with you guys and you expect me to react this way and this other person expects me to react that way, now I'm in trouble. So people were very scary to me, and I didn't have the courage not to paint my own cage. When I say I paint my own cages, I put myself in hell. I put myself in a box, in a cage. In the Oxford group in New York, which Bill Wilson attended, Fitz Mayo attended, Jimmy Burwell attended, Hank Parkhurst attended, but Bill was before them. Roland had attended there, Ebby had attended there. But in the Oxford group in New York, the rector of the cavalry mission was an Episcopalian minister named Sam Shoemaker. And Sam Shoemaker had a very, very profound effect on Bill and on, excuse me, on the early members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Sam Shoemaker wrote a book. And in this book, he wrote on page 93, the book is not conference approved. I'll give you the name of it. I'm not recommending it. I'm not disparaging it. I'm just telling you what it is. It's called Twice Born Ministers by Sam Shoemaker. Sam Shoemaker also wrote a poem that is not conference approved, and I love it. But again, you may not, you don't have to read it. It's called I Stand by the Door. Very, very touching poem, and I just happen to love I Stand by the Door by Sam Shoemaker. But anyway, he wrote a book in which he said he believed that there were 4 impediments to God. Now, what is an impediment? An impediment is either something that slows, like a speed bump, or stops, like a wall, progress. Impediment means to impede. Impede, it slows or stops any progress. Okay? Impediment. Now, Sam taught the guys that there were 4 impediments to God. The first one being a resentment that you will not let go of, and that became our step 4. The second impediment was a secret that you will not tell, step 5. The third impediment is a harmful thrill that you will not stop, and that became steps 6 and 7. And the fourth impediment to God became a restitution that you will not make. And in the Oxford group, they did not speak of amends. They spoke only of restitution, but they mean basically the same thing. Restitution is the root word. Restitute means to replace or to restore. Amends is to change, to alter, to mend. We don't apologize to the Constitution. We amend the Constitution. So when we amend the Constitution, that means we are changing the law of the land. We're changing our laws. So those are the four impediments to God that Sam Shoemaker taught the boys, and it became something that was bedrock to our steps as we see them today. So what we've done so far is we've said part of the part of the work that we're doing, part of the spiritual awakening is we're going to get right with ourselves. We're going to get right with God. And now we're going to embark on effort to get right with our fellow human being. Very, very important that these are side benefits to what it is that we're doing. Again, we've reviewed the fact that in order to really fully allow somebody to experience step 9 as sponsors, if you are a sponsor, get them started on step 10 and 11 before this process, because without step 10 and 11, and eventually very quickly 12, it's going to be impossible for me to forge through the fear and the anger and the guilt, shame, remorse that I'm going to experience in step 9 without the aid of Chips Ahoy, without the aid of chocolate milkshakes from McDonald's or whatever that may be. So these are very important things. And now we're ready to go to page 76, and we're going to start step 9. And again, just one thing else. When you have a sponsee, and I don't want to turn this into a step 12 sponsor thing. There is a meeting on Saturday night where all they talk about is sponsors. And if you are a sponsor that hasn't been doing what I'm suggesting, you may want to attend that meeting. But the bottom line is that we have a situation where we want to get people started on 10 and 11. Very, very important. And we want to make sure that we support them as best we can. But there are people who think they've offended nobody, and there are people who believe they have offended everybody. And it is very important as sponsors to bring them to that middle ground, bring them to that reality. You didn't offend nobody. Don't tell me when you're 52 or 60 or 80 or 7 that you've never offended anybody in your life. Of course, for a 7-year-old, it's a little bit more difficult to think. And don't tell me that you offended everybody. So somewhere in the middle is the truth. Page 76, bottom of the page. Probably there are still some misgivings. As we look over the list of business acquaintances and friends we have hurt, we may feel diffident. What is diffident? Diffident is timid or shy, fearful about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. Let us be reassured, to some people we need not and probably should not emphasize the spiritual feature on our first approach. Let's stop right there for just a second. One of the phone calls that I get, and I get a lot of outreach calls, I get a lot of phone calls from people, and sometimes people know why they're calling me and sometimes they don't, whatever. But one of the things I get is, I don't want to talk about God in front of Fred. I don't want to talk about God in front of Mary. Then don't. The purpose of step 9 is not to proselytize God to the person that you've offended. The purpose of step 9 is for you to make amends for harm that you have done. So it is very important to remember to read the book. Probably it says there are still some misgivings. It goes on to say here, to some people we need not and probably should not emphasize the spiritual feature on our first approach. Now, this may seem to you that you're going to approach these people several times. In most cases, you don't. Even when I set up payments with people, I would mail the payments and not go see them every time. But some of these guys, when they made payments to somebody, they didn't mail it. they walked over there. They lived in the same town. They lived in the same area, and they would go over there with whatever money they had. And if God came up from the other person's perspective, great. And if God didn't, they let it sit. So we need not confuse this. This is not an evangelical mission. This is not a proselytizing endeavor. This is you or I making amends for the harms that we have done other people in the past. Okay, top of 77, we might prejudice them. At the moment, we are trying to put our lives in order, but this is not an end in itself. Now, the next line is not only vital, and I implore you to forget the next line, do not highlight it, do not underline it, nor remember it at all, because the next sentence in the book is very unimportant. So pay it no mind, pay it no attention. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. Let's stop right there. There's a question that many, many people have asked, and this sentence answers that question. You can go to the Old Testament, you can go to the New Testament. I don't know the New Testament very well. I'm not a student of the New Testament, but what I can tell you is, and I don't know the Quran, I don't know, other things. What I do know is this, to me, is the answer to an age-old question. Why are we born? Why are we here? And this sentence is pure Oxford Group. Our real purpose, forget this sentence, it's unimportant, but I'm going to talk about it. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. Now, can I be of maximum service to God and the people about me if I'm in the food? And the answer is no. Now, there are people, and there are 125 of you here right now. You might be on a committee to feed the homeless. You might be on a committee to clothe the homeless. You might be on a committee to do all sorts of charitable and wonderful, wonderful things that serve God. I am giving you my opinion. I am giving this to you based on my experience. I cannot be of maximum service to anyone when I'm 500 pounds. I cannot be of maximum service to anyone when I have a stomach full of food and a head full of the big book. I had a sponsor, name was Tom. He lived in Chicago, or the suburbs of Chicago, and he used to say the definition of pathetic. What is the definition of pathetic? A head full of big book and a stomach full of food. That's the definition of pathetic. But I cannot be of maximum service to God and the people about me when I'm in the food, because when that food is inside of me, as Dr. Silkworth teaches us again and again and again during the 8 pages of the doctor's opinion, without which there's no book, there's no program, there's no nothing. Without Dr. Silkworth, there is no program. None of it would make any sense. What sense would this make if you didn't know the problem? What sense would this make if you didn't know about the allergy of the body? Remember, he teaches us that any description of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. When I am in the food, I am an eating, lying machine. All I care about is, are you made of chocolate? If you ain't made of chocolate, I don't want to hear what you have to say. Unless you're made of Almond Joy material, or unless you're made of French fry material or pizza, I don't want to hear what you have to say, because all you're talking about to me is just like gibberish. It's like Charlie Brown when the adults are speaking of wah, 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 wah. I don't don't care what you have to say. Honestly, when I'm in the food, I may love you. I may love you. I don't care if you live or die. You die, just get the hell out of my way. I want more food. I become a different person. And sometimes that's hard for us to see. Sometimes we fool ourselves into thinking, oh, I'm the same person whether I'm eating or not, because I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a drug addict. I'm not high on drugs. I'm not drunk on liquor. I'm the same person whether I'm eating or not. Maybe in your mind, but not in reality, you're not. If you have that secret that you're bulimic and you're going into the bathroom and you're hurling your guts out and you're looking for more food to hurl, or I'm looking for more food to eat, we are not the same people. We do not have the same capacity for service as we do when we are abstinent and we're working a program. Remember that abstinence does not treat the disease. You've been on diets before and you return to the food. You stopped purging before and you return to it. You've relapsed before and gotten well, and then you relapsed again because you didn't have the steps. You didn't have the spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. So this very unimportant sentence that I don't want you to remember, and I don't want you to think about, and I don't want you to highlight in your book and in your head, is our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. And in order to do that, I'm going to tie step 9 into it because you might have been thinking I went off on a tangent. In order to do that, I must walk the streets a free man. 9 and 5 are the great emancipators. Why do I call 9 and 5 the great emancipators? Because 5 and 9 allow me to look the world in the eye. They free me from the guilt, the shame, the fear, the remorse, the anger, the hostility, the isolation of my disease. 9 sets me free, that if I see you on the street, I can stick my hand out and say, it's good to see you, Fred. It's good to see you, Joe. It's good to see you, Mary, because if I owed them money, I've either paid them back completely or I've made terms with them and I am paying them on a regular basis. I don't have to see them and see the look of horror on their face because I'm way up in weight and I am significantly heavier than the last time I saw them because I'm also abstinent. And I'm at or approaching a healthy body weight. I just been to the OA birthday and I've been to Vision. Used to scare me to go to the OA birthday because I didn't know how I was going to react. When I was down in weight, it gave me confidence. It gave me freedom. Freedom is the key word. Freedom is the key word. Okay. But this sentence, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us, is in step 9 because 9 frees me, emancipates me to be of service, to stick my hand out and say, I'm glad to see you. And I really am. I was never glad to see anybody. I was never glad to see anybody. I just wanted to be isolated from the world. I wanted to be left alone so I could eat myself to death, and I wanted to die peacefully with a stomach full of Doritos. I want to live. I want to serve God. I want to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. And I feel every day when I go to sleep that I have done that. It takes a lot of effort and the work is very, very hard, but the wages are very, very high. Let's continue. It is seldom wise to approach an individual who still smarts from our injustice to him and announce that we have gone religious. So I just screwed you out of money, or I told you I was somebody that I'm not. And now I'm going to go and throw God in your face. Now I'm going to go to you and say, well, I've discovered God and blah, blah, blah. No, I'm not going to do that because it tells me here not to. In the prize ring, this would be called leading with the chin. I'm in a boxing match. I'm in the ring, and now I stick my chin out and let you punch it. You're going to knock me out. Why lay ourselves open to being branded fanatics or religious bores? We may kill a future opportunity to carry a beneficial message. But our man is sure to be impressed with a sincere desire to set right the wrong. He is going to be more interested in a demonstration of goodwill than in our talk of spiritual discoveries. In other words, you owe me money. Let's see some cash on the barrelhead, kid. You did this or you did that. Let's hear some contrition. Let's hear some apology. Let's hear some remorse. Let's have you describe what you did and why you're here. I'm a lot more interested in that if I have been offended, if I have been wronged, than I am talk of God. You sometimes, and I don't want to be judgmental here, but sometimes you hear these guys that are murderers and they're rapists, and then they're coming up for trial, to be let out of jail, and they go out and I discovered God and I'm a minister now. That's great and that's fantastic, and I'm not knocking God. I'm not knocking anybody who becomes a minister, but it sure would have been nice if you had discovered God before you killed those children, or before you raped that woman, or before you committed your offense. And again, I respect what they're doing. I think it's fantastic. It's great. But again, it's hard to listen to that when you think about the magnitude of their crimes in many, many cases. I am a believer in God. I'm not knocking anybody who believes in God. God bless those people. But again, it sure would have been nice if they discovered God before the crimes. He is going to be more interested in a demonstration of goodwill than in our talk of spiritual discoveries. If you feel in your mind you do not want to talk about God and all this stuff, you just want to pay the money back, or then do that. If you really convince this person, they're not going to be very receptive to a discussion of spiritual matters, it's not required. And this paragraph tells you that it's not required. Yes, we never apologize to anyone for believing in God, but sometimes it's best just to leave things as they are. Absolutely. Yes, I know in the questions and answers every year when we get to this, people say, well, what about where it says we don't apologize to anyone for believing in God? We're not apologizing for believing in God. We're just not out to proselytize right now. Okay, if they ask us, then we don't apologize. Page 77, middle of the page. We don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God. Here we go. When it will serve any good purpose, we are willing to announce our convictions with tact and common sense. The question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. Sometimes the people that you harmed, you couldn't stand them. And sometimes that's going to happen where it's going to make you very shy or diffident about approaching these people with an amends. Okay? If he has done us more harm than we have done him, and though we may have acquired a better attitude toward him, we are still not too keen about admitting our faults. Nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. It is harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial to us. We go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret. I want to talk for just a minute here about one of the amends that I had to make during my life. I was in program, but I was in relapse at this time. And I was about maybe 575 pounds, 550, 600, somewhere between 500 and 600 pounds. And I had what they called at that time a hot tooth. What a hot tooth is, it hurts, then it doesn't. Then it hurts, then it doesn't. Why? Because the nerve was dying in my tooth. And this was in the early 80s. And a lot of dentists today you take for granted because they've been doing this now for 25 years. A lot of dentists at that time in the 80s did not do root canal. So if you needed a root canal, you were referred by your dentist to what was then called or is called an endodontist. And an endodontist specialized in root canal. That's what they did, endodontist. So I went to this guy who was right by my high school, by my bank, right where I lived when I lived in Chicago in West Rogers Park. He was walking distance from my high school. And I went to him, and his daughter was the nurse, and she ran the office. And she came in and she put the Novocaine, she gave me shots of Novocaine in my mouth. And one of the things that I got used to in my life is shutting down emotionally when people are berating me for my obesity. I have been berated by strangers. I have been berated by friends. I have been berated by lots of different people in my life, doctors, for sure. And this guy finally comes in the room. You know how you go in and then they come in, they don't just come in right away. He comes in and without saying a word to me, good morning, Mr. Grabowski, or who referred you or whatever. The first thing he says to me is, "You are the fattest person I think I've ever seen in my life." He says, "I'm glad you didn't break my chairs out in the waiting room." He says, "You are the most obese human being I've ever met in my entire life." Now I'm numb, and I got nowhere to go. I need to get this tooth fixed. I am in pain. I need to get this tooth fixed. His face is right here. I mean, 2 inches from my face. And he's yammering on about, what do you eat for breakfast? What do you eat for lunch? How many desserts do you eat during the day? Why are you so fat? Don't you realize you're ruining your health? And this dialogue is going on for a minimum of what seemed like 10 years, but was really probably a half an hour. Why are you so fat? Why doesn't your doctor put you on a diet? Why don't you go to the gym? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And this guy is working on my tooth, and they're sticking the little corkscrews in my tooth, the way they do with root canal. And he's putting them in and putting them out, and his daughter's there. And he is giving me a lecture on nutrition and giving me a lecture on the benefits of exercise. And he is telling me repeatedly, he thinks I might die right there in the office because you're so fat, your heart is just going to stop. Okay. Well, I had good insurance then, and my part of the bill was $62. Now, my part of the bill today would probably be 300 or 400. I just had to go to an endodontist, and my part of the bill was like $1,200, something like that. Anyway, I've stiffed better people than this jerk. I'm giving him $62 when hell freezes over. When frickin' hell freezes over, this guy's getting my $62. I'd rather throw it in the street than give it to this asshole. Years go by. Now I'm back in recovery. I'm working it now. It's 83 or 84 because there's a couple years there, 81, 82, where I was just in relapse. 83. Now I'm back in, and I'm doing it now. I'm doing it, and I have a sponsor that I just told you about, and he was the one that used to come up to me when I was first in program, And I was 24 years old at that time. I was 30 years younger than anybody in that room. And he'd put his finger in my chest and he'd say, "Are you out of ideas yet, kid? Are you out of ideas yet, kid?" He says, "Because if you're not out of ideas, I'm wasting my freaking time." And he used the real words. I mean, wasting my time. And he'd say, "Let me know, are you out of ideas yet, kid?" And he was this great big guy, great African-American guy, just huge, not fat, but huge. I mean, his shoulders were like, they were in different area codes, different zip codes. His shoulders were like in different area codes. And he was great. I mean, he was wonderful. So anyway, and then we'd get to the ninth step and he'd say, "What about the doctor?" And I'd say, "He's an endodontist." And he'd say, "Shut up." And he'd say, "What about this?" And he'd point on the piece of paper where I wrote the guy's name. Finally, I had to go make amends for this. Like a while passed. I went to the bank right next to where his office was on Lincoln Avenue in Chicago. If you're from Chicago, the office was approximately Lincoln in California, right by Mather High School, right where I went to high school. Anyway, I got a 50, a 10, and two ones because I owed him $62. A 50, a 10, and two ones. I'm turning the fan on because it's getting hot out there. It's going to be in the 80s today. Anyway, here in Arizona, at least. So I got a 50, a 10, and two ones. I went across the street. I don't see his name on the door. I see other names, but I don't see his name on there. I don't know what the heck happened to him. So I go in there and I see his daughter. I recognized his daughter. But by this time, I'm down a couple of 100 pounds. And I see the daughter and I say, "I need to make amends because I never paid you." And she said, "I remember you. You look much different now." She said, "I remember how my father treated you. I don't want your money." And I said, "Miss, you don't know how badly I need to give you this $62 because if I don't give you this $62, I got a problem and I don't want to tangle with this guy and I need to give you this money." So I gave her the money and she apologized to me for the way her father treated me, but he had passed away not long after my encounter with him. It was a Thursday that I did this. My tires did not touch the ground on the way home. I was lifted up. I was elevated. I could barely choke down my dinner. I didn't want it. I didn't want dinner. That's not me. I went to the Thursday night meeting. There were a lot of people there. I went to the Thursday night meeting at Swedish Covenant Hospital. And the Thursday night meeting was a speaker meeting. We did Big Book Sunday, 12 and 12 Monday, Big Book Tuesday, Big Book Wednesday, Speaker Thursday, no meeting on Friday. Saturday we didn't go to Swedish, we went somewhere else, but eventually all the meetings landed on Swedish. So I was there every single day, just like the North Scottsdale Fellowship Club here, and now Zoom. I told my story to a couple of people there, and they said, "You got to go up to the front and tell that, and say that." And I did. And I just I never felt closer to God in my life. I had gone to someone that I had hated. I had gone to someone who mistreated me a lot worse than I mistreated him. He marginalized me. He made me feel like a piece of dirt. He made me feel like I didn't deserve to suck air out of the atmosphere. And I went and I paid the money back. I don't think I've ever felt that close to God in my life. And if this works for me, it'll work for you. Let's continue. I'm at the bottom of 77. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Simply, we tell them that we will never get over drinking until we have done our utmost to straighten out the past. We are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so. So never trying to tell him what he should do. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the result. Now, this is absolutely true in my life. I do not sit and discuss anyone else's faults or what they did, but my own. One of the misconceptions in program is the sponsors allow this too. They perpetrate it. For some reason, people think that if you have been raped or molested or you've been violated in some way, that for some reason you have to go make amends to this person. No, you don't, not unless you harm them. You have to make amends to them if you harmed them, but if you never harmed them, you don't. I get this question incessantly. I was raped. I don't see why I have to go make amends. I don't see what my part is. You didn't have a part. Unless you harm the person and there's more to the story than meets the eye, why do you have to go make amends to them? Sponsors, find out what these people did to harm the person, because that is very, very pertinent information. A lot of times people want to go make amends to somebody else and they don't know themselves. What did they do to harm this person? Sponsorship, strong sponsorship should weed that out. I never let anybody go make an amends as a sponsor without specifically telling me, what did you do to this person to harm them? And a lot of times people want to make amends because they've broken up with the person and they want to see if they can rekindle, or they miss the person and they want to go make amends to them because I miss this girl or I miss this guy. That's not what amends is for. You miss them, call them. You miss them, write them a letter. You miss them, say, hey, on Facebook, hey, I'd like to get together. Remember me? I really miss you. Can we schedule? That's not amends. That's a social thing. Amends is for harms. Make sure that the sponsor and the sponsee are clear. What did you do specifically to harm this person? You were friends with somebody, you went your separate ways. That's part of life. Unless you harm them, we don't make amends for things that have nothing to do with that. Very, very clear. And we're relying on the sponsors to make sure people do not run around making amends for nothing. They never did anything. They're just there because they feel bad that we were in high school together and I went in with this group and you went in with that group and I ended up going to this university and you ended up going to that university and we lost touch with each other. That's not something you make amends for. Let's continue on page 78. In 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. Sometimes the man we are calling upon admits his own fault. If they do, fine. If they don't, that's okay too. You're not there for that. So feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress, even if it's with God and yourself. Our former enemies sometimes praise what we are doing and wish us well. Occasionally, they will offer assistance. It should not matter. However, if someone does throw us out of his office, we have made our demonstration, done our part. It's water over the dam. Just follow that paragraph. If you're a sponsor, use that paragraph and let the person know that this is the reality of the situation. Page 78, middle of the page. Most alcoholics owe money. There's the understatement of the century. We do not dodge our creditors, telling them what we are trying to do. We make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. Remember, Dr. Bob didn't want to go make amends because he was afraid people would find out that he was a drunk, that he was an alcoholic. There was only one person in Akron that didn't know Bob was an alcoholic, and that was Bob. They probably know about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. Nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory it may cause financial harm. Approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us, arranging the best deal we can. We let these people know we are sorry. I get asked all the time, should I apologize when I make amends? No, I did this to you. I did that. I'm not going to say I'm sorry. Here it says, let these people know we are sorry. I'm sorry. See, it's a very clear sentence. I regret taking that action. I regret that I did this to you. Our drinking has made us slow to pay. We must lose our fear of creditors, no matter how far we have to go, for we are liable to drink if we are afraid to face them. What step do I need to lean on for that? Yeah, that's right. Step 10. Good answer. Step 10. I need 10 to do 9. I need 10 to get me over the hump of that fear and that hesitation. Bottom of 78. Perhaps we have committed a criminal offense, which might land us in jail if it were known to the authorities. We may be short in our accounts and unable to make good. We have already admitted this in confidence to another person, step 5, but we are sure we would be imprisoned or lose our job if it were known. If it were known. Maybe it's only a petty offense, such as padding the expense account. Most of us have done that sort of thing. Maybe we are divorced and have remarried, but haven't kept up the alimony to number 1. She's indignant about it and has a warrant out for our arrest. That's a common form of trouble too. You cannot be afraid, and I cannot overemphasize that you're going to be leaning into 10, some cases 4, but you're going to be leaning into 10 so that you can overcome the fear that you have about these things and move forward in your program of recovery. If you are a sponsor, again, teach them that when they're scared, make that call, do step 10, do what they need to do to get over that fear so you can go in and remind yourself there's only one power in this universe I am here to answer to, and that's God. And where God guides, God provides. So if I have to go in and make an amends over money, if I have to go in and make any kind of amends, he is going to see me through this. As long as I walk to him, he'll run to me. What does walking to him mean? Step 10, prayer, things like that. Those are the 2 key things. Prayer, step 10, reaching out to others to talk about it. Okay. Although these reparation is just another word for amends, it's just another word for restitution. Although these reparations take innumerable forms, there are some general principles which we find guiding, reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience. We ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. We may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing. We have to be. We must not shrink at anything. Do you remember we asked ourselves on page 50, on page 53, not page 53, excuse me, page 58, if you've decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. Now they're asking you again to call upon your oath, to call upon your vow that you are willing to do this. Do you want to recover or not? Do you want to recover or not? And that's a question I've asked my sponsees over the years, because if you don't make this amends, you are not going to recover. Remember the 4 impediments? What's the last one? A restitution that you will not make. Doesn't say a restitution that you cannot make. Doesn't say a restitution that you should not make or whatever. It says a restitution that you will not make. When you make that decision to refuse to follow the program, when you make that decision to refuse to go to any length to recover, you are going to be back in the food. So think about this. Sponsors, reinforce this to sponsees. Very, very important. You either want to recover or you don't. And if you don't do what's in front of you, if you don't do these things, you are going to find that it is going to be impossible for you to recover. This is not a cafeteria. You're going to take a little of this. You're going to take some of that. You're going to leave that. This is something where you have to do all of what they're telling you to do, or you won't recover. Page 79, let's do one more paragraph. Usually, however, other people are involved. Therefore, we are not to be the hasty and foolish martyr who would needlessly sacrifice others to save himself from the alcoholic pit. A man we know had remarried. Because of resentment and drinking, he had not paid alimony to his first wife. She was furious. She went to court and got an order for his arrest. He had commenced our way of life and secured a position and was getting his head above water. It would have been impressive heroics if he had walked up to the judge and said, "Here I am." We thought he ought to be willing to do that if necessary, but if he were in jail, he could provide nothing for either family. We suggested he write his first wife, admitting his faults and asking forgiveness. Again, admitting his faults and asking forgiveness. People have an instinct to support the striving. He did, and also sent a small amount of money. Very important. He sent what he could. He sent a small amount of money. He told her that he would try to do what he would try to do in the future. He said he was perfectly willing to go to jail if she insisted. Of course, she did not, and the whole situation has long since been adjusted. People don't like being ignored. If you've harmed them, talk to them, apologize to them, send them what money you can. Do what you can do. You will find that when you walk to God, he will run to you. Miracles are happening every day. Trust God. Take the action. Do not sit there and just say, well, I don't have the whole amount, so screw it. Just do what it says in the book. Very, very important. Before taking drastic action, which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. If we have obtained permission, have consulted with others, ask God to help, and the drastic step is indicated, we must not shrink. I'm going to tell you a quick story in the minute we have left before Q&A. Number of years ago, long time ago, I sponsored a man who was a cardiologist in Houston, Texas. And he worked by himself. And then he brought in 2 other cardiologists to be part of the practice. And for a number of years, they did very well. And one of the things that they did was they hired one of the wives to run the office. And then that wife got pregnant and she wanted to stay home and raise her children, raise her kid. Well, they went and they investigated an outside agency to run their practice. And they hired an outside agency to run the practice. And they started making money like there was no tomorrow. The money is rolling in. Now, this guy's in recovery in AA, OA, and NA. and he's a cardiologist. And he didn't know what to make of this. It's the same patient load, the same patients, same work, but the money is considerably more. And he doesn't question it for a while. He's enjoying it. And it bothered him that the money was coming in such amounts as never before. He does a little investigating, and he finds that this outside agency is billing the state of Texas and the federal government money that they had never billed before. And he goes to his two other cardiologists and he says, what are we going to do about this? And they said, you're going to shut up. You're going to shut your mouth. You're going to say nothing. We've hired these people. We're going to let them do their thing, cash the checks. You don't want the money? Give it to charity. He could not go turn them in because he didn't have the permission of these other two doctors. He was in psych wards. He relapsed. His life was miserable because of what he had found out. When you have other people that are involved, you must secure their permission. You do not just go in and implicate someone else. He shouldn't have relapsed. He should have worked his program. He should have done what he needed to do, but he didn't do it. Okay. We're going to stop there on page 80, and we're going to pick that up next week. I hope this was informative. I hope this was good. I sometimes don't know because it makes sense in my mind, but God only knows. And sponsors, I'm calling upon you to make sure that when your sponsees go out to make amends, that they are making amends for a harm that they have done. I am calling upon you to be the adult in the room and not allow people to use this step for something other than what it was intended for. It was never intended to reunite lovers or reunite people who lost contact. That's not what this is about. Okay, I'm going to go turn it